Mamelodi at Ridgeville and Hammanskraal in Gauteng. Well, joining us from our Pretoria studios is one of the project researchers, Professor Theo Sandfort, is from the New York Psychiatric Institute at Columbia University. Prof, good morning to you and thank you so much for joining us. Let's first start with this. Not many people are familiar with the term MSM. Please could you explain it and the prevalence thereof in this country?
We use the term MSM to describe men who have sex with men, and they can be gay, they can be bisexual, they cannot use a name for themselves, but what is important is that they have sex with men, and as a consequence they might put themselves at risk for HIV infection because of the sexual context they have. So it's a name to collect a lot of different groups.
Also, among those groups are men who have sex with men but don't associate themselves as being gay or even bisexual and lead separate lives, if I can call it that. They perhaps have wives and girlfriends as well. What are the dangers of the secrecy around such a category in the MSM?
So in our study, we indeed had some men who didn't identify with any label. They called themselves straight. And it's these men who have indeed sex with women as well. I don't think that's something that we would like to see. We would like openness about these things, especially if they engage with men and with women, and that is not always there necessarily. So we understand that sometimes that happens because they feel like they are forced to be secretive about their sexuality, because when they would come out about what they do, they would encounter stigma and negative responses. But at the same time, they put themselves and other people at risk by not being open about this.
Let's explore the HIV/AIDS risks among this category. Now, Prof, we know that many people believe in the myth that if you have anal sex, that it's not sex and you cannot get HIV from that. Just clarify that myth from us.
Well, that is a terrible myth, because anal sex, in a way, is the most effective way to spread HIV, especially if you're the receptive partner. And that can apply to men and to women as well. The men in our study who had sex with men and women also, and not all of them, but also engaged in anal sex with women. And that is also why we see the high prevalence in this population. A lot of these men engage in receptive anal intercourse, and that's the most dangerous thing to do if you don't use condoms.
Well, South Africa is already rolling out ARVs, Prof. Why should there be a special focus on MSMs, do you think?
A special focus is needed because for a long time we didn't know anything about HIV and MSM in Africa and in South Africa for that matter. When we started this project 5 years ago, I asked people, well, what do we know about the prevalence of HIV in this population? And nobody was able to answer that question. So, and it's understandable, because we thought that South Africa had a heterosexual epidemic, but as a consequence, there was no attention for MSM. And now we see that transmission among men is really occurring, and it's on a high rate, I would say.
I mean, in this day and age where homosexuality is beginning to make, or at least to be accepted by many communities, it's become open now. We have gay marriages in South Africa legalized. Why do you think there's still so much secrecy? And why do you think that the men involved in your study did not want to know their HIV status?
Okay, that's two questions. We have been out in the townships, but also in the city of Pretoria, to share our findings with the community of prevention workers and of gay men. And what we encounter is a lot of ignorance about homosexuality, and sometimes very strange ideas, because some people think, for instance, that men have sex with men because they have small penises and they don't dare to contact a woman because they feel hurt in their masculinity. So there's a lot of ignorance. They don't understand why men have sex with men. So indeed, South Africa has a great constitution, but socially there's still a lot of work to do. And if we want to reach these men with HIV prevention, then something has to change in these communities as well.
Prof, just in closing, this is not an incident or a phenomenon that's prevalent in South Africa only. I know in the US there's a term that they call it down low as well, when men don't come forward and speak about their sexuality but engage in homosexual activity as well. How do you think as a country we should go forward and openly discuss this? Because many would think it is a very sensitive topic.
Yeah, what we have discovered is that it's important that people start talking about sexuality, not necessarily about homosexuality, but sexuality per se. And that is still quite something to accomplish. Talking with partners, talking in a community about what happens, and acknowledging that there is something like anal sex, and there is something like men who have sex with men, whether they call themselves gay or straight or bisexual.
We'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. That was Prof. Theo Sandfort from the New York Psychiatric Institute at Columbia.